I put a prompt on my Instagram story asking people to give me some questions to do a Q&A, as it's been a while. This is going to be that episode, so thank you for joining, thank you for watching, and I will try and do these every couple of months. So if you're not following me on Instagram, drop me a follow, and when I post something asking for questions, then I'll try and answer yours as well. So this one was from Alexandra in France. She's come with two, and I will answer both of them for her. The first one is, you once said that the past year was the one in which you grew and changed the most. How is Thomas from more than a year ago, who was packing his bags to start a job in Malaysia, different from the Thomas of today? Such a good question with so many layers on it. Might be a long one to start. When I was moving to Malaysia, my focus on life was very different. I thought I knew exactly what I wanted for the first time in my life. I was tunnel visioned on one specific thing, and I was just going at that 100%. I had more fixed ideas about myself and who I was than I do now. I understand myself more in some ways and understand myself less in others, or realize I don't understand myself as much as I did, is actually a better way of putting it, rather than understanding myself less. I've just shattered some conceptions about myself. I'm definitely bolder now than I was a year ago. Say a year ago, I still had 200 followers on Instagram and I had 4 posts. And since then, a lot has changed, mostly thanks to meeting someone who pushed me outside of my comfort zone in the form of Juria. And she's definitely done that multiple times and still does it. She still comes up with TikTok ideas that make me cringe at myself, but she's definitely made me more accepting of who I am and less worried about what other people think when I put stuff out there. So she's been an incredible part of my character development, for sure. And I'm now less certain or less rigid about exactly what I want to do. I know that I still want to keep doing the finance, and I've been saying this all along. Like, my clients that I have now are my friends, and I've just booked in a review with a couple of my clients for next week, and genuinely I'm excited to catch up with them, hear what's been going on, and the finance part of the conversation is less exciting for me, but it's important. But yeah, it's awesome to have clients that I want to speak to, right? And that's a genuine like for them that I have. And I've also been a lot more picky with the clients that I work with now as well, including when I left my last job. I left behind some clients that, you know, they're not bad people, but they weren't people that I was excited to talk to, or I felt like we connected with. I felt like our relationship was more professional, more business, and it forced me to be in that character that I was in when I was working for my last firm, which was the always professional in the suit, where now I don't wear that very often. I go to most of my meetings kind of dressed like I am now, fairly casual. I find that means that I can be more myself, and yes, some people won't like it, but I'm quite picky with who I bring on as a client now, and it's got to be someone that I enjoy talking to and I enjoy working with. So it's definitely changed me on that front. Whereas before, working for the other firm, I felt like I had to write business. I had to bring clients in, and it didn't matter whether they hated me or not. It was, how can I bring them on? And now it's a different vibe from that, which I'm thankful for. The second part of Alexandra's question was, what personality trait do you like the most? It can even be one that others might consider a flaw. I would say it's the ability to be vulnerable that I have developed, which I was by no means born with. I was incapable of being vulnerable, especially around my peers when I was growing up and as a teenager. And a couple of people have commented on this in the last few months, just saying, are you always this vulnerable? And the answer is no. I think I am kind of guarded. And again, that probably stems from not having the best relationships as a child. But when I first meet people, I would say that my guard is generally up. And I'm looking at them almost suspiciously, trying to work out, is this a person that I will connect with? Is this a person that means me ill intent? But once I'm fairly satisfied that they're not, and this doesn't mean that I'm certain that they're not, but once I look at them like, okay, I'm getting good vibes from this person, I am always searching for deep connection and deep conversation. And Brene Brown, one of my friends, sent me one of her TED Talks. She said, without vulnerability, there is no bonding. And that was one of those moments for me when I heard that, because it makes perfect sense once you hear it. But the act of bonding is each of you just getting a little bit more vulnerable with each other and getting a bit more comfortable letting your guard down, right? In any relationship, when you first meet each other, you're a bit guarded. And then the more you get to know each other, and eventually you end up, just lying on your couch in sweats, not caring at all about how you look, and I don't know, just being completely relaxed, right? Being goofy and messing around and being your true self. And you have to go through various stages of doing that, because if you just meet someone and straight away they're like that, you're looking at them in a certain light, right? Because you don't know them as a person. You might judge that they're always like that, or that's them at their best, So you have to build that relationship, build that trust, and each of you gets progressively more vulnerable with each other, and you know each other and you trust that you have the best intent for each other. I feel like I've said each other 100 times there. So I will try and instigate that. I will be vulnerable with someone in the hopes that they will reciprocate and feel vulnerable back. And don't get me wrong, sometimes it backfires. Sometimes I'll take the first step and be vulnerable about something, and I'll watch the reaction on them like, oh shit, they feel uncomfortable. That's oversharing. And for some people it is, and that's okay. And then if that's the reaction that I get, then maybe I'll pump the brakes on and I'll wait until we get to know each other a little bit better before trying to instigate that again. But I have found, like with the podcast that I just filmed, my friend Ganesh, like he's someone that we met once and I was kind of guarded. And then the second time I met him, deepest, most emotional, vulnerable conversations, just incredible. And I was so thankful for that. And I feel like so many people are searching for that in this day and age, in a world full of connections that are just superficial and they're online. When you meet someone that is ready to have or go to that next level with you, it can feel so refreshing. And a lot of the time it's just waiting for that person to instigate it, right? So I will try and be vulnerable and share things about myself with someone to make them feel safe to do the same. And I've tried also doing it to be more accepting of myself. I shared a story on a podcast that I was on with Maggie Wang, so I was on hers, and I shared a story that was kind of mortifying, right? The story that I shared was that when I was 17 years old, she asked me if I'd ever cheated on anyone. And the truth is, worse than that, I told my partner that I had. So I caused all the pain as if I had cheated on them. But it was a lie that had started when I was drunk and my friends had seen me with a girl, and to try and impress my friends, because I was a 17-year-old that thought it was all really important to be a womanizer and everything else. And they were like, what happened? And I'm like, yeah, of course I slept with her. And I woke up the next morning, obviously sobered up, just full of dread. And I was like, what do I do in this situation? I'm on holiday with 10 guys. I say none of them maybe one or two I was close with, but most of them were just sort of acquaintances of a group that I was trying to fit in with that I didn't really. And I told them all that I'd slept with this girl the night before. And I was like, well, even if I go to them now and I say, hey guys, look, I lied last night, I didn't do anything, what are they going to believe? One, they're going to look at me like, okay, that's extremely sad, but you probably did anyway, and the rumor's still going to get back. So I did what seemed the most logical thing at the time, and I called my girlfriend and I told her I'd slept with someone when I hadn't. So yeah, that's a pretty horrendous thing to do, right? If you meet a person and you're looking at them as a potential mate and they've done that, that's a massive red flag. But if you don't look back at things that you've done and cringe at yourself, then you haven't grown as a person, and you should be alarmed. You're meant to look back at who you were in the past and be extremely embarrassed of it. And by sharing those kind of stories, it just shows a level of comfort and acceptance with myself and who I am now, and acceptance of who I was. Like, I wasn't always who I wanted to be. I didn't always make the right decisions. I did get caught up in trying to pretend to be someone that I wasn't, to try and impress people. And by accepting that that is being a part of me, it helps me acknowledge and address it now. So when that urge to try and impress people and be someone that I'm not now comes up, which it still does, I think it naturally comes up for everyone in certain situations. I recognize that feeling, and I recognize that I've addressed it and I don't like it and I don't want that anymore. So yeah, I would say that's been the thing that I'm most proud of, is the comfort with myself to be vulnerable. Really long answers for the first two. I don't expect them all to be this long. The rest of these are quite a lot shorter. From Maria Foy NZ. How do you look after yourself when you're having a rough day mentally? Good question, because I am trying to be in this personal growth space, right? I try and set a good example. I try and talk about how to do things optimally. Like, I'm a big proponent of not having caffeine in the first 90 minutes of waking up, not overloading your dopamine receptors so that you still enjoy the regular things in life and you still have the motivation to do things like hard work. But I am flawed. And often if I have a bad day, like, I've got a business partner, and the other day I had a bad day and I still had loads of things that I was supposed to have got done that day and I didn't. And around 6 p.m. I messaged him and I was like, mate, none of this is going to get done today. I was like, I'm sorry, I've just got to take the evening off. I ate a load of junk food. I just watched some absolute trash on YouTube. And I just had a comfort night feeling sorry for myself, because I had had a really stressful day that pushed me to a point where I was like, I don't want to deal with this today. I don't want to deal with being in my own head right now. So I took the form of escapism that I could. And yeah, now I'm not an advocate for doing that regularly. I think the more that you escape and the less you're able to sit with yourself and work with yourself, the more you lean towards escapism. And escapism can take place in many forms. It can be burying your head in social media, scrolling TikTok, eating junk food for the dopamine rush, just binging Netflix. It can take harder forms in terms of alcoholism or drug addiction as well, which are common forms of escapism. But every now and again, I think everyone can do that and need that. And I definitely did. So that is what I wanted to start with and say, I'm human and that happens. But what I try and do when I'm having a rough day mentally is set the foundations for a better day the next day. Now, I didn't do that the other day when I had that binge evening, but still the next day when I woke up, I knew that I'd given myself that escapism. I had wiped the slate clean effectively. And although I woke up feeling on a bit of a sugar crash and a dopamine crash after just binging the night before, the next day when I woke up, I was like, right, I need to reset. I need to get this done. And I tackled it with a cooler mind. And it was like I was working with myself. I was like, right, yesterday, everything went so wrong. Today, how can we sort it out? Right, if we do this. And the next day went really well. So I'm happy for that, because the danger with escapism and burying your head and binging is that it can become a perpetual cycle and you can end up wasting weeks, which happened to me last year. So it is something that I have to be careful of. But I try to do it in healthier ways. I like to get massages out here. They're crazy cheap. You can get a massage for an hour for the equivalent of £6 to £8, which is about $10 US. So yeah, I get them really regularly. I try and eat healthily, and I try to give myself good rest, because I know that looking after myself will help me tackle it in the days coming. I just screenshotted all of the questions, and there's a lot of the OnlyFans ones in there, which again, I'll touch on because I haven't done in a while. I don't want to do OnlyFans, and it's probably not for the reasons that you think. Like, I have no problem with my body or people seeing my body or putting it out there. Like, if my nudes got leaked, I wouldn't lose any sleep over it. I'd be absolutely fine. The reason I don't want to, I think, is an ego thing for me, that I want to be successful in business. I want to be successful in things that bring tangible value to people's lives, whether that's helping them manage their finances and get rich, or it's helping them in their personal growth journeys. That's my passion, right? And the Japanese word ikigai, it is what that means is the perfect place where your passions, what helps the world, and what brings you income and happiness all align. That's the perfect thing. And if I went down the route of OnlyFans, that wouldn't be my ikigai. That would be me taking a shortcut to earn a load of money because I could, but it wouldn't be aligned with my long-term goals. And you know what? If this social media thing had happened when I was 19, 20, if it had blown up and I'd had people knocking down my door for OnlyFans then, I might have done it. I probably would have done it. Two reasons. One, I wasn't so sure of what I wanted. And at that point in my life, I was just looking for anything that I could have done. So I probably would. And also, I would have had youth on my side. But I'm now 30 years old. And the more you attach your self-worth to your physical appearance, the less happy you're going to be in the long term, because everyone's physicality and attractiveness is a depreciating asset. It is a fact of nature that you pass your prime at a certain point and your looks will deteriorate. And you need to accept that and be comfortable with that. And you see people that don't accept that and they want to fight it and they put loads of work into themselves to try and fight it. And some of them are successful and some of them are not. And there is something to be said for aging gracefully. So I have no plans to be getting any modifications done to my body or anything like that. And I want to attach my self-worth and my income generation to an appreciating asset, which is my intellectualism, which is my brain, which is my interpersonal skills. I'm getting better at those every year. My experience in business, in finance, it's getting better every year. Whereas I feel like year on year, I'm actually going to be getting less attractive, and I don't want to be caught on that treadmill where my self-worth and my actual financial worth is dictated by my physical appearance, because I have battled with body dysmorphia in the past, and I know that that's a route that would exacerbate it. But I would be perfectly happy, selling pictures of myself half naked for some money. Like it doesn't bother me on an ethical level. It doesn't bother me on a moral level at all. It just doesn't align with what I want out of life. So yeah, I hope that explains that one. How did you know your calling from a job? Was from Leonardo da Vinci. How did I know my calling for a job? I did not. I never did. When I was 18, I started playing poker, and I traveled the world playing poker for about 3 to 4 years. And I was sure that I wanted to be a professional poker player, but I didn't. I just enjoyed it because it was a form of gambling, right? And I was really a prodigy for it when I started, and people used to comment being like, oh, we're going to see you on the World Series and everything else. And that excited me. I loved the idea of the glitz and the glamour of the big wins. And again, it just didn't align. And I didn't understand what Ikigai was then, but I just knew that that didn't align with what it was for me. And I stopped enjoying it, and I stopped working on it. And when you stop working on something and growing and you just get into a point of stagnation, it loses its appeal. So that was the first thing. And since then, I've been a doorman, I've been a bouncer, I've been a bartender, I've been a jiu-jitsu coach, I've been a hospitality manager, I have been an operations manager, I've been a student. I have tried my hand at a lot of different things. And when I reached 26 years old, I'd just finished university, and I knew that I wanted to be in a certain bracket of society and have a certain level of income that I was nowhere near achieving, because I'd spent my whole 20s traveling and getting rich in experiences rather than wealth. And I always had this feeling that the world was just going to hand me a living, and it hadn't. So I Googled the top 20 best paying jobs in the UK because I wanted to earn money. And I worked my way down the list, and I got to number 16 because everything before it either required too much work in university or too much work experience to get a job role like a CEO. And I wanted to get rich fast. or it required nepotism, right? Like it required you to know certain people. So when I got to number 16 and it said investment manager, I Googled it. I didn't know much about it. And it said the qualifications take 18 months to 2 years. And I was like, right. It said the average earnings are above £60,000 a year. And I was like, right, that's, at the time, that was my target. I was like, that would be enough for me to have a good family, send my kids to private school and everything else. Like, let's do that. And so I put myself through the qualifications in 3 months because I was just so determined to get in a position where I was going to be earning good money. I got a job in finance. And again, I was attacking it with just drive and tenacity. I was chewing my manager's ear off constantly about when can I get into an advice role? When can I get effectively promoted and progress constantly? And I moved really fast because I was just so driven at that point. But I was driven by the uncomfort of the stage that I was at in life. I felt like I was behind. I felt like I was having to play catch up. And I just worked really hard towards this. I just picked something and went at it. And that's what I would recommend anyone to do if you don't know. Pick something and go at it, because eventually you'll get there. And if you pick the wrong thing, which I did 8 times, you will start the next position from understanding yourself better and having more experience, which is a better place than you are now. Try something, pick it, work at it, give it everything. And if it works, amazing, you found your calling. And if it doesn't, then pick something else and go at it again. And eventually you'll find something that aligns with you and gets you one step closer to your ikigai. You won't start with your passion. Very rarely do people start with their passion and then have it turn into their income. It happens, and it's one of those fairy tale situations, right, where you imagine that. But that has downsides as well, because often when passion becomes work, it stops being the passion. You see it a lot with, artists that they love to paint, and then all of a sudden they've got to paint things for work constantly, and it loses its appeal. It's got pressure with it. They've got to learn all the other finance things. And it's a natural form of progression, right? Like people who love working out then get into being a personal trainer at a gym. And then all of a sudden there is less about the working out and it's more about the coaching side. And then that progresses into management, and it all of a sudden you're not doing the version of the thing that you loved, and you've just transmogrified it into something completely different. So yeah, pick something, go at it, and the passion will come. If it's right for you, the passion will come. From Vicky Not Whiskey, what are you looking for in your life right now? Great question. I'm constantly pivoting on that. I want to build good relationships, and this is always one of the main focuses when I move to a new place. Like I've just moved to Bali and I've met some amazing people, but it takes time to build deep connections and relationships. So I think that is one of my main focuses right now. I'm looking to build a network here and meet like-minded and amazing people, which I know are here and I know I will. And if anyone knows anyone in Bali who fits that description, then feel free to set me up with an introduction. Scrolling past all of the feet pics ones, etc. I'm not going to go into any more of those. From Jay Rinchy, how big is it? I am imagining you are asking about my height. I am 6'2". From Chelsea's Lake, what's your best advice for someone that is bad at saving money? Good question. When you say you're bad at saving money, you are giving yourself a label which almost excuses it. And I've been guilty of this. I will say, and I've been saying this to my business partner, when tech issues have been coming up, I'm shit at solving tech because I get stressed. I'm just not good with modern computer technology. And I just say, I'm not good at that. Like, that's not my thing. But yesterday he gave me something which I needed to do because of time restrictions and him not being able to. And when he sent it to me immediately, I was, oh, God, another tech thing. But I sat there and I worked at it. And I got through it and it got sorted. And I said, okay, I'm not actually that useless at tech, right? I know people that are useless at tech. My grandmother is useless at tech. I'm not, but I give myself that label so I can also almost be like, not my section, you do it. And you should be careful of doing that with yourself. When you give yourself these labels, they become self-limiting and they become true by you saying them. People say things like, oh, I hate the gym, I hate working out, when they've been there 3-4 times. But when you actually keep working at it, then it becomes something that you enjoy. But giving yourself that label and that belief that you hate it when you go, take the mindset instead of saying that you're bad at it. I haven't learned to be good at it yet. And that's what you are. You're not bad at saving money. You just haven't learned to be good at it yet. And by asking that question, it shows that you've got the want to. So now just start putting the things in motion to start learning. The first thing I would look at is budgeting, and drop me another message after this. I've built a budgeting tool for this financial course, which is going to be getting released at some point. It is built. I'm just trying to get the right launch strategy and the right partner to do that, who I've been in conversations with. I will send you this budgeting tool and you can use that. You can put in your income, you can put in all of your outgoings, and it will help you clearly compartmentalize what you're spending on. And you'll then be able to see where the leaks are, right? And what you're willing to give up to be good at saving money. You might find that you're spending £300 a month on going out drinking. And when you see that, you might be like, okay, maybe that's not worth it. You might find that it's going on takeaways. You might find it's going on subscriptions to things. And you'll be able to see what's important to you and what's not when it's clearly there in front of you. That's the first step. For my driven friends that want to be successful in business, the advice I give is just earn more. Like, try and earn more. But I know for most people, they work in structured jobs, which has a set income. The promotions are few and far between and often don't come with that big of a pay jump. And being successful in their career isn't the most important thing in their life. It's having a family, it's having a relationship and a home. And in that situation, they don't want to work on the hustle and the grind and everything else. And that's fine. So in that case, it needs to come from saving. If you have the capability to earn more through a side hustle, or through being in a meritocratic job where the harder you work and the more successful you are, the more you earn, then great, try and earn more. If not, then look at the budgeting. I hope that helps. From Annabelle Chan, are you and Julia dating? I don't know any Julias, so no. And also not dating Julia. I know what you're asking. From Belladonna Bani, if you could visit any country where you would go, if you could visit any country, where would you go and what's the first food you'd try, is what that is meant to say, I'm pretty sure. I can visit any country that I want to, and I often do. I think just for the sake of trying food, I've never been to India, so I would fly to India to have the best curry. I would look for the best curry recommendation and just fly to India to try the authentic ones. I do typically find that I prefer the more British variations on the curries rather than the Northern Indian curries. But I would like to go and try an authentic one from a proper restaurant there. So yeah, fly there for a curry. Also, one of my best friends, he has been to Vietnam and he's an absolute curry fanatic. And he said he had the best curry of his life in Vietnam. So I was actually looking at seeing if I would fly there to go and try that. But it was a bit too long of a flight to justify for a curry. From John by John Sam, top 3 cuisines if you have to have it for the rest of your life. Good question. Ties in nicely to the last one. It had always been Indian for me. I was addicted to curry. Like when I lived in New Zealand, there was a local Indian restaurant that did a lunch deal where you could get a curry rice and naan for $10, and it was 10 New Zealand dollars, which means it's like, I don't know, $6 or $7 US. And that was so good. I went 4 or 5 times a week, and my friends told me that I was starting to smell like an Indian person. Like my sweat smelled like curry, which again, I'm not saying anything is wrong with that. But that's the degree to which I would eat curry at that point in my life. I've gone off it. Like I haven't gone off it to the point that I don't enjoy it, but I've just lost that fanaticism with it. And now I would say the thing that I enjoy the most is burritos. Burritos can actually be quite clean depending on where you get them from and what you get put in them. Like if you get them stuffed with fries and everything else, they're not great. But if you're getting rice, meat, veg, maybe a bit of sour cream in there, a bit of guacamole, great. Like, fill me up. So I would say Mexican is number one at the moment. Always got a guilty spot for pizza, but I just feel like shit whenever I eat pizza, like afterwards and the next day as well. So that's pretty rare. But yeah, I would say Mexican number one. I still keep Indian at number two just for the sentimental value, because when I go back to the UK, and there's nothing better than going for a good curry with your mates. And then number three even. Worrying mathematical skills from me there. Number three, I'll put in Italian for my cheat meals. John by Sam again. Height and weight. I am 188 centimeters, and which is 6'2". I might have got that wrong. It's 6'2". I think that's 188 centimeters. And weight, I am fluctuating right now at the point of filming this podcast. I am 95 kilos, which is a lot lighter than I usually am. I'm usually around 100 kilos, but I got horrendously ill. I had a food poisoning thing alongside a tropical fever, which meant that I couldn't eat for 3 days, and I was just sweating constantly and other nasty stuff you don't want to know about. So I am a lot lighter right now. I don't know if you can see it on me, but I definitely see it on myself. I feel like I look anorexic because you always judge yourself based on what you look like, right? And I know I'm not. I hope that isn't triggering to anyone. But yeah, I feel extremely small right now compared to what I am used to being. From Tessak216, where do you see yourself in 3 years' time? I see myself having a small group of financial clients who, again, are my friends and the best ones that I enjoy working with. I see myself having successful side ventures and side businesses, and I see myself potentially growing the finance business so that I can train people underneath me, because I feel like I'm going to have more inbound requests for financial advice than I'm able to handle, because again, I want to keep my client bank quite small and select, but I would also like to be able to help every single person that comes to me looking for help. So I see that could be the process of what's happening there. Location wise, I don't know. I just don't believe myself when I say that I'm going to be somewhere for a long time. So I just avoid speculating. I have no idea where I'm going to be in 3 years. Maybe Bali, maybe South America. But yeah, one thing I have to just accept about myself is I have life scale ADHD, and I constantly need to be moving and trying something new, which is okay. But maybe I'll meet someone that makes me want to start a family in a certain place and be excited to commit. I am excited for that chapter of my life whenever it comes. I don't know if I'm the problem that's not ready for it, or if I just haven't found it yet, and I'm still working on that, which I'm going to sidetrack on. Again, when I was on that podcast with Maggie Wang, we posted a reel where I was talking about relationships, and I was talking about how men operate typically, to share this for women who were trying to understand more why men might mess them around or push them towards a situationship role or whatever else. And there was a comment on one of the reels that Maggie shared that promoted this, which was, why are we even listening to a man that's got commitment issues? And I mean, there are always going to be negative comments on the internet, right? And this was one of those moments where I've been vulnerable online, and I shared the fact that I'm having these difficulties with longer term relationships. And it's not because I want that. It's not because I want short term relationships and want to be sleeping with people all the time. Like, people ask me, oh, how easy is it for you to get women? And so I haven't been on a date or hooked up with anyone for months. And yes, if I went out and was actively pursuing it, like, I could do that. I know that it's there, but it's not like that's the desire. And the reason I have commitment issues is because I want to be a fuckboy. It's not the case. It is a genuine battle with myself of not knowing whether I just haven't met the right person yet, or if I have a problem with myself that makes me scared of commitment. Because the problem with trying to pick one of these as the answer and then focus on it is a dichotomy, and it's opposite to the other. Because I worry that if I just say, right, you've got commitment issues, you just need to commit to someone and focus. What if that was never the problem? And what if I forced myself to settle with someone that wasn't right for me and I wasn't right for them because I'd just decided that that was the issue? And on the other side of the coin, what if I refuse to accept that I've got commitment issues and I spend the rest of my life lonely and alone because I can't commit to anyone and I just keep telling myself I haven't met the right person yet and I'm looking for someone perfect that doesn't exist and is never going to come along? So yeah, it is something I admit, it is something that I'm working on. And I don't think that it then discounts my opinion on how men operate. If anything, I think that I'm probably the person that you should be listening to because I'm a perfect example of the complication of a man. It's an ongoing joke, right? Men are so simple. They'll put their dick in anything. They just want to, but it's not true. I'm sure it's true in some cases. There are men like that, I'm sure, but there are a lot of men that are a lot more complex than that and just get tarnished with the same brush. And the label of commitment issues means that they are somehow a bad person. Maybe in some people's eyes, that's the case. I don't have any negative intent with it. I am the person that it hurts more than anyone, apart from the people that I get into a relationship and run away from. I'll give them that. That's not fair of me to say, but that's not nothing for me either. Like, I go through pain every time I go through a breakup and every time that I leave, and I don't want to keep doing that. So I want to work on that. Yeah, bit deep on that one. No, I'm not going to read that one. From Fang SP. Have you ever seen yourself as a dad? If yes, how do you see yourself as a dad? Good question. I'm going to go deep and vulnerable on this one as well. I worry about how good I'm going to be as a dad. I had a troubled relationship with my father growing up. And I look back on some of the things that happened in our relationship and I didn't make it easy for him. I think my mum says that he had this idea that when he had a son, his son was going to be his mini-me and he was going to be able to mold and shape him into who he wanted him to be. And then I came along and I am naturally argumentative and disagreeable and naturally just a pain in everyone's ass. And I made it very difficult for him. And me having a difficult relationship with him meant that he had a difficult relationship with my mother because he didn't know how to handle me. And that makes me worried for when I have kids. I think I have this natural tendency to assume that what happened in my parents' lives is going to happen to me. And I naturally think that when I do find someone and I have kids with them, I'm probably going to get divorced from them at some point because that's the example of relationships that I've had in my family. And I worry the same with parenthood, that, you know, my dad's an angry man. He's not a patient man. And I have inherited some of those traits from him. I can be quick to anger. I can be very low on patience. And it makes me worry for when I have kids if I will make the same mistakes, because I can look at what's happened and think, right, I won't do that. But you don't know when it comes along, right? And I had a situation with the dog here, Nana, who I literally adore and is my best friend in Bali. And every day I spend bunches of time with her. And she bit me the other day when we were on a walk, and she got nervous. She bit at another dog. I just went to break them up, not thinking anything of it. The other dog ran off and Nana bit me, and I lost my temper big style. And afterwards I felt unsettled for a day or so. I felt shaken. I was like, right, that was a side of me that I thought was gone. I haven't seen myself have anger like that in years. Because she did a chunk, right? Like, I can still see my finger here. I thought I was going to have to get stitches, but I've just bandaged it up and it's been okay. But yeah, it's going to happen. And it reminded me of a situation when I was a kid and my dad was trying to get me to behave and I was being naughty or whatever else. And he was trying to put me into the car seat and I slammed the car door and his finger was still in the car door. And I remember the rage. I was probably about 3, 4 years old when this happened, but it is one of my core memories. I remember the rage from my dad, and my mum saw it instantly, and she jumped out of the passenger seat to just try and like get out of the car and like calm him down because his head was gone. And that is a trait that you inherit. And it was something that when I saw the other day, I was like, right, I thought I'd beaten that. I spent a lot of time working on my anger, and it just made me realize, like, okay, that's not gone. That is something that is still lying dormant in you, and something that you need to continue to work on to ensure that it never comes out. And not that it never comes out, that it never comes out in a way that you could hurt someone you love or someone you care about. I hate the idea of not being in control. And for a moment, I wasn't. So yeah, I guess that's a deep answer to that question. But I know that kids are the closest thing that I will find to a purpose in life. Or I think I know that. One thing I need to know is that I don't know anything. But I feel like I've always known that at some point I would want kids. But I've always thought that I would have them late in life, like maybe at 40. And I want to aim for a bit younger than that because my dad is a lot older than me, and it limits the things that we could do or the things that we could do while I was growing up. So I know I want to have them. I just feel like I have more work to do on myself before I do. So yeah, long-winded answer. I hope that helps. One thing you wish you could be better at in your family/friend relationships. I always wish I could just be there more. I have a very selfish life. As soon as I'm bored, as soon as I have an itch to move somewhere or do something, that's what happens. No one else's thoughts or opinions or feelings have ever stopped me from doing what I wanted to do. I've always thought that I'm very selfish on that front, and my family accept it fully and they support me in it. My nan says like she would never want me to be somewhere that I didn't want to be, just to be near people that I love and I care about. Her specifically when she's talking about that, but I know that the same applies for the rest of my family. And yeah, a lot of the time that I wish I could just be there more for them. Do you find traveling and not sticking to one place for too long, etc., fulfilling for yourself, and why? It's from Angelica Middling. Ties in well to the last question. Really, really good question. Fulfilling is an interesting word to use for this one. I always crave deeper connections and crave spending time with people that I feel comfortable around and connect with. And the more I travel around, the less that is possible. So on that front, it's less fulfilling. On the other side, when I've tried to settle in one place for a long time, there's a different sense of unfulfillment. I've got a major case of grass is greener syndrome, and I always think that moving somewhere else will be new and exciting. And it is. Like every time that I do this, I meet new amazing people, crazy things happen to me, and I've got such a colorful array of stories to tell about my life because of the crazy stuff that I've done and the fact that I've just moved to new places and just tried new stuff constantly. And Malaysia was a perfect example of that, right? I left a girlfriend who I loved and cared about and loved and cared about me. I left all my family and friends. I moved to a company in a country that I'd never been to. And what happened? I went viral on TikTok. I gained loads of followers. I started a podcast. I lost my job over it. I started side hustles with people I haven't met. I'm building a finance course. Like all of this crazy stuff happened because I just chose to go and start somewhere new. And whenever you do that, you will have these new experiences. It is spinning the wheel. And I love doing that. But do I want to keep doing that forever? Probably not. I think at some point I would like to build a base and roots in one place. From CPK 8402, deep and kind of dark question, man. What's the worst thing you've done to a woman? I've never laid my hands on a woman, and I never would in a situation that wasn't defending a woman that I loved, right? If I was with my partner and another woman attracted her in the street, then I would probably pick her up and throw her. But I've never been in that situation. I've never had to defend a woman from another woman. I have to defend women from men, and always happy to get involved in a fight for that reason. Worst thing I've done to a woman is probably that story I told earlier. Is probably telling my partner that I had cheated on her and slept with someone else when I hadn't. And I put her through all the pain of being cheated on when it wasn't even true. Like, what a horrendous thing to do. Yeah, I don't think anything else has been bad to that front. I guess one thing in an earlier relationship that I had, I realized towards the end of the relationship, and I was young, I was 22 when we met, but we would get in arguments, and if I argued harder, she would just drop it. And I realized that it was subconsciously happening, that whenever she started giving me a hard time about something, I would just argue harder, even if I was wrong. And when I broke up with her and I left, she said to me, she was like, "We're so good together." And I was like, "We're not." I was like, "I crush you." And when I told her this, and I was like, "Look, when we argue, even if I know I'm wrong, I just argue harder and you just give up." And yeah, you can't, I wasn't putting that on her like it's her fault. It was just pointing out that we weren't great for each other because we had a relationship that was becoming toxic. It was becoming manipulative, and it was never abusive. But yeah, it just meant that I crushed her. And she, when I said this, she went and did some work on herself, and she came back to me a couple of months later and said, "Do you realize that what you were doing was emotional abuse?" And my immediate reaction was, "Well, you're saying I emotionally abused you?" And immediately I got kind of defensive and angry. But I look back on it now and I'm like, no, that was a form of emotional abuse. And I didn't realize at the time that that's what I was doing, but I realized in hindsight that it was. So I guess that's probably up there as well. So those two things. Otherwise, like I leave partners all the time. Every relationship that I've had as an adult, I've been the one to walk away from it and leave the other person. And it's never been like a mutual decision, right? It's never been what the other person wanted. But I feel like I've always been as honest as I can be in the lead up to that. I've always been honest that this probably isn't going to be a long-term thing. I have commitment issues. I tend to run away, and I try and handle that the best that I can. So yeah, hope that helps. From Naomi Vera, have you got girlfriend? No, not got girlfriend. From Shivad Vasudi, how's your dating life in Bali? Are you like those typical foreigners who date around? No, I've been out once since I got here to go and see one of my favorite DJs. But apart from that, I've not been out drinking. I've not been dating. So when I say not been dating, I mean like not going out on dates and doing a load of like dating and drinking and putting yourself in situations where you hook up and that. My dating life has been pretty much non-existent, bar two people that I met at the gym that I tried to see, and neither of them were a good fit. So all quiet on the Balinese front. From Bloody Pigs 35, what did pigs do to you? Any advice for someone trying to get back their life together after the painful loss of a sibling? I've never lost a sibling. I had a brother that died before I was born, but obviously I never felt the hurt from that. My mum does still, but I've never been through that. Yeah, I'm the wrong person to ask. I don't even want to try and talk about it because I'm just so uneducated on that. I've never even lost a close family member. I had a grandmother die who I wasn't that close with. I'm just extremely close with the grandmother that I've got now. And when she goes, that's going to be a crazy life experience for me. And I have no idea how I'm going to handle that when it comes. But I feel like I'm already trying to prepare myself for that and not take for granted the time that I have left with her. But I'm really sorry that you lost a sibling. I don't know how to handle that. I wish I could give you some counsel, but yeah, it needs to come from someone that actually knows what they're talking about. Ice Serpent Woman. How do you find the motivation to keep going with projects when things get tough? Good question. Thank you for asking this one, because I am someone, as I've mentioned multiple times in this podcast, that quits on things when they get tough. If a job gets tough, I quit. If I don't like a country anymore or it gets hard there, I quit. If a relationship gets hard, I leave it. And it's made me aware of that side of me and made me want to work on that. And so this podcast that you're listening to right now, when I started this, is because I loved the idea of having the deep conversations, and that is still something that I love. But there's so much bullshit that comes with running a podcast, especially by yourself. And that's just reminding me to check that this is still recording, because the amount of technical issues that I have with this shit, it kills me. It made me want to quit. It was like, it's not worth it. I'll just find friends to have deep conversations with. But I've stuck at it. And I think one of the main reasons I've stuck at it was a statistic that 98% of podcasters never reach their 20th episode. And that just made me be like, right, stick at it, just keep going. And you go through waves, right? You're not going to want to quit forever. And if you do, then you know you need to quit. But it doesn't stick around like that for me. I want to quit when things get hard. And then I keep going, and I go through a good period where I meet amazing connections through it. And I'm glad that I'm doing it right now, thankfully. Touch wood, if all this is recorded properly and my editor hasn't got to scrape the audio from the camera because the microphone was dead, then I'm happy and I'm enjoying it. So I just realized I haven't answered that question fully. So how do I find the motivation to keep going with projects when things get tough? I don't think it's motivation. I've lost motivation with this a lot of times. For me, it's a discipline thing. Discipline trumps motivation all the time. Because if you're disciplined, it means you do things even when you're not motivated. And if you're trying to keep going with a project, you're not going to be motivated a lot of the time. And if you rely on motivation, it's just not going to get completed. So you need the discipline to do it. And the discipline gets built by making a contract with yourself, honoring your own word, and then sticking to it on that front. So for me, I promised myself I was going to get to 20 episodes. I've now done it. Maybe I need another hook to keep myself going for a little bit longer. Ali Abdaal talks about a 50th episode, so maybe I'll set that as the next target and just keep that as a carrot in front of my nose to go forward. From Clarissa Guzman, have you ever fell in love and got hurt? Interesting question, because I've had a lot of conversations about this where people like, in your adult life, like since you were 18, as if it doesn't count before that, because the only times that I've fallen in love and got hurt were as a kid. But that was the most intense feeling that I can remember of love. And I wonder if my commitment issues are actually stemming from that, but people discount it because I was 11 years old and I didn't even know what love was. Well, guess what? I still don't know what love is. But I know that at that point, my heart felt like it was going to pound out of my chest. And then she sent her friend to break up with me and was immediately in a relationship with someone else after 3 days. And I remember trying to not cry on the playground and pretend that I didn't care, when it was the most pain that I had ever emotionally experienced at that point. I think maybe that shaped me. Maybe that's why I am scared of going deep with partners. I don't think I'm scared of going deep with partners. Am I? You know what I am? I'm scared of doing it because I feel like I'm going to run away and hurt them. Maybe there's a connection to what happened to me as a teenager going through that, or maybe there's not. But I am suspicious that some of the most formative experiences in your relationship type happen to you when you're a teenager, and we often discount that. From Yuri KMH, have you ever been to Mexico? Yes. I enjoyed Mexico. I want to travel South America more. I speak like 5% of Spanish. So that's more than I speak of any other language other than English. So I like the idea of being somewhere that I can build on that and actually learn a second language, because I'm well aware that I'm one of these spoilt Brits that can get away with just speaking English everywhere. And I'd like to not be so lazy. No, I'm not going to read that one. From Angelica Middling, what's the most beautiful place in the world that you've been to? There are a lot of places that are beautiful for different reasons, but if I think to pure natural beauty, New Zealand, South Island, I did a road trip down there, and it was like every corner that I went around could have been the picture on a postcard. It was insane, just incredible fields, rolling hills, mountain ranges, fjords. You want to travel around Milford Sound, it's like you're in Jurassic Park. You've got cliffs hundreds of meters high either side of you that you're cruising down this fjord on a boat, and they've got massive cascading waterfalls coming down them with green lush life everywhere and birds flying around you. It's literally like something out of Jurassic Park. It's beautiful. From Patrick MM, are you where you wanted to be right now? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? Good question. I have recently been reminding myself that these financial goals that I've got for myself, when I've achieved them in 10 years, I know that I would trade every penny of them to be 30 years old again, free, living in Bali, finding myself, working on my side hustles. And I try to remind myself of that because I've been getting stressed on occasion and just being like, oh, I've got so much to do. I've got so much to do. And I always tell myself that I'll be able to enjoy life once I've achieved this. Once I've done this, then I'll be happy. I have already achieved goals that I said would make myself happy, and so have you. And just constantly postponing happiness until you die, well, then what was the point of life? So I'm trying to remind myself of that and be happy now. And where do I see myself in 10 years? Hopefully with a wife, kids, rich, no desire to run away from anyone or any place, and content. That'd be the dream. From Angelica Middling, again. How come you're back in Bali again? Are you going back to your old job because of the TikToks? No, Jury is just recycling some old footage. I won't ever be going back there. That job wasn't in Bali either. That was in Malaysia. I'm in Bali because my work is now fully remote and I can be anywhere that I want to be. And Bali seemed as good a place as any. From Sophia Anderson 11, how are you doing? I'm doing good. And I hope you and everyone else listening are as well. From Bewitched 4, how are you looking after yourself? Just constantly trying to do things that tomorrow me will thank me for. I try and keep myself in the gym even when it gets hard, and it has been hard recently with the sickness and the injuries. But I just try and keep doing that. I try and eat healthy, and I try not to destroy my dopamine receptors by binging Instagram reels or playing video games, because you have a finite amount of dopamine to spend. And if you spend it all on those things, you won't enjoy the regular things in life, like going for walks or, I don't know, other things which just aren't as dopaminergic. From Rashmishenya, what would you do a finance or wealth management episode for young professionals? Yes, I've been holding off on doing finance content for two reasons. One, because I don't think that it's exciting for most people and they wouldn't want to listen to me do it. Two, I don't want anyone to think that this podcast is now being used as a lead generation tool or a sales tool for my finance work, because this is separate. It is a passion project. But I do intend to put out some finance content because I do think that there's a lot that I can share that can help people. But one thing that happens when you become an expert in something, you forget that everyone else doesn't know what you know, right? So a lot of the things that I would talk about would be quite far over most people's head. And the thing that I should be talking about, I feel like, oh, well, everyone knows that, don't they? But I've recently realized that they don't. When someone was asking me to explain compound interest to them, I was like, right, okay, if I'm doing this, and when I'm building this finance course, for example, I'm building it from the very basics upwards. But yes, I will do that soon. From Quote, what has been a pleasant surprise with your online presence? You know what? It's kind of sad, but a lot of people place a lot of value on having online presence. It's almost synonymous with social status in today's day and age. So I found that more women are interested in me because I've now got 40,000 followers on Instagram and 100,000 on TikTok than they were when I didn't have an online presence. I used to have it on dating apps where someone would say, do you have Instagram? I would say yes, give them my Instagram, and then they would just ghost me because they saw I had 200 followers and I didn't post anything. Whereas now it's almost like that's a tool in the pocket that most women seem to care about. Now, I get it. I'm not slighting women for this. I think men kind of do as well. And I've experienced some men look at me differently because I have an online presence. We are constantly judging people by status and working out how much respect to give them, right? You ask someone, what do they do? And that question is loaded. Like, you are working out how much respect to give them when you ask them that. If someone says, I just take benefits because I don't really like working, so I'm just on minimum wage. Just taking those. There's no reason why I'm on them. Just don't like working. You're like, okay. You judge them on that answer. Conversely, if someone's like, I'm a rocket scientist, you're like, wow, this person's really intelligent. I'm going to judge them. And it's a spectrum all the way in between, right? So yeah, we are constantly working out how much respect to give someone based on their status. And that is just a human thing. We are naturally a hierarchical society. We love the idea that we're all equal, but it's never been like that in nature. There has always been competition between humans, and we are always working out where we fit in the hierarchy of life. So I guess that's been one thing which, although I don't fully agree with, I think I'm still worth as much as a person now as I was when I didn't have a following. And I don't think the fact that a friend of mine posted some thirst traps of me online and it's now given me some followers makes me more of a person. If anything, it makes me a little bit more cringy at myself and questionable over whether my morals still align with what I'm doing. But the rest of the world doesn't see it that way. So yeah, I guess that's one thing. From Bell Palacio. Where are you standing now in a scale of 1 to 10 on achieving your personal development? Great question. I don't think... Well, let me think about this. Okay, I don't think I've ever met anyone who is at a 10 out of 10 on their personal development, and I don't think that I will ever get to be a 10 out of 10 on my personal development. So it's hard to place myself now where it's constantly moving, right? I feel like I'm progressing every year. I would say probably somewhere around the middle. I would say somewhere around a 5. I've made massive leaps and strides in my personal development, understanding myself, working on the things about myself that I don't like. But I still feel like I've got so far to go. And another thing that is like, it's not like it's a horizon. No, it is like a horizon. It's like you can see it. So you're like, I'm going to head to that horizon. I can see what I want to do. But then when you get there, you realize there's another horizon and there's so many other things that you want to do to improve yourself there. So I think it is constantly like that. A lot of the things that I'm working on now, I didn't even know were things that I had wrong with myself or needed to work on a year ago. And I'm confident that in a year that I will realize other things about myself and want to work on them. So it's so hard to say where you are when you can't see the full scale. Yeah, sorry, that wasn't a succinct answer, but I hope that helped. From Noble Riv, what is your life motto? Life is not about the pursuit of happiness. Life is the happiness of pursuit. That is something that I have taken, and I don't know where it originated from, but I was always being like, oh, I just want to be happy. I want to get to being happy. Happy is another one of those moving targets. There is no person who just exists in a permanent state of happiness, because it becomes the new status quo. It becomes homeostasis, and you don't feel the happiness anymore. You feel normal every day. And if you feel normal every day, you're going to feel dead inside. So you need to have that contrast constantly. So happiness shouldn't be what you pursue, but you should be happy with what you are pursuing, if that makes sense, because the pursuit is constantly going to be a moving target that will evolve. And as long as you're enjoying what you're pursuing and it aligns with what you want and what's true to you, then that would be a better target. Your life is moving. Don't look for a state that is still and permanent, because it doesn't exist. From Steph Parsons, how many hours per day are you working remotely? Good question, Steph. I was beating myself up last year because I was trying to just do 6 hours a day when I was literally in a depressed state. I was miserable. I was, yeah, in one of the lowest states that I've been with in years. And I just couldn't even bring myself to do 6 hours a day. And I remember my mum saying to me when I was having one of these tough moments, she was like, stop being so hard on yourself. Like, you're expecting too much. And I literally shouted. I was like, I'm not expecting too much. Like, I'm literally expecting myself to do 6 hours a day. That's a part-time fucking job. And she said, it's too much for you right now. Get emotional, I think about it to that moment, because it was. And I just expected so much of myself all the time that I felt like I was not asking anything of myself. But I was asking too much of myself in that moment. That was a moment where I just wasn't capable of doing that. And I couldn't accept that. I couldn't accept that me, someone who always gets what they want and works so hard, could be in a state where they couldn't do that. But I needed to be patient with myself. And you need to accept as well that when you are working and you're the only person holding yourself accountable, it's not a full-time job anymore. It's not you go to work Monday to Friday, 8 hours a day. Like, when you work for yourself, it just isn't like that. And you need to accept that it's not a long distance run where you keep the same pace the whole time. It is a game of sprints and rests. And since I've heard that, which is since that sort of breakdown moment, I have looked at it very differently. And I'm like, okay, I'm in a period where I need to rest right now. The sprint will come. So I have days, and yesterday was one of those days where I had a meeting at 7 a.m. and I was still on my laptop working at 10 p.m., which is 15 hours. But I mean, I had breaks in between that. I went to jiu-jitsu. I went and met a friend for lunch. And then I have days where I'm like, you know what, today I just really don't want to do anything. And working with yourself, we hate being told what to do. We hate being forced to do something that we don't want to do. And when you're your own boss, it is almost like you are an external person that is controlling yourself. And something that I heard, which is great, which is, don't ever tell yourself no. If your body is craving something like junk food or craving a break when you're doing hard work and you just want to stop, don't tell yourself no. Say, in 10 minutes, I can. And then in 10 minutes, if you do another 10 minutes of work and you want to stop, you told yourself you could take a break. But if you get there and you manage to get yourself back into a flow state, which will happen a lot of the time, or you'll stop thinking about that junk food for a period of time, then you just don't end up doing it. But you never told yourself that you couldn't, and you never forced yourself to do something that you didn't want to do, other than just 10 minutes, which isn't a lot to ask of yourself, when telling yourself no is often a lot to ask of yourself. So yeah, a lot in there. Thankfully, this was towards the end of the podcast. I'm not sure how many people will get to that moment of rather extreme vulnerability. I think I'm going to round it up, but I've still got so many questions here. I might do a second one, but I think that this has gone on quite long. From Rob, how are you going to retire early? I think that was a joke because he's put a winky face there talking about the OnlyFans thing where I said I'm pretty sure I could retire next year if I did that. I don't think I would want to retire early. I think my life will have a series of mini retirements where I will stop one venture and move on to another. And obviously the finance thing will just be a sort of continual where I just manage my ongoing clients. So yeah, I think there will be a series of mini retirements in my life, and I don't think I'll ever stop working fully because it gives me purpose. Last question is from Gwen CXX. What's your legacy that you'd like to leave behind if the world were to end tomorrow? I would love to be someone that was a good role model for people that were struggling. I love helping people. Maybe it's an ego thing of being in the position where I'm the person that is, able to guide. It's my favorite thing in finance. I love when I meet people that specifically want to learn. And one of my clients, Beck, she won't mind me name dropping her. She messaged me after a meeting the other day and she said, "Thanks so much. I always feel like I know nothing and I'm just starting out, but every time that I meet you, I feel like I've learned 10% more. And I was like, fucking love that. I love that I'm able to help someone and educate them on finance and guide them through it. And it's not just in finance. And as someone who went through really tough periods in life with mental health, with ego crisis, with not having any purpose in life or direction, and being an extremely flawed human that needed to work on themselves to have healthy relationships, I also feel like I have a passion in wanting to share that with other people as well. So if I can do that, then I'll be very happy. So yeah, I'm going to bring this home because it has been a long one. But yeah, there were still so many questions on here, which I'm going to save, and I'll try and do another one of these soon. And if I haven't answered your question, I do deeply apologize, because I didn't actually pick these out based on best questions. I was lazy and just screenshotted them all. Next time I'll go through and I will put in the effort and I will pick out the best questions. So I'm not strolling past all this trash on the way as well. Yeah, guys, if you've listened this far, then genuinely, I appreciate it, because one of the things I worry about with this podcast is that when I get positive feedback, it's just from people that like me and are offering support and don't actually think the content adds value. I guess it's a form of imposter syndrome. But I really want to get to the point where, whether people like me or not, they can't dispute that my podcast helps people. And the more I do of this, the more I feel like I'm heading in that direction. I see big development and growth from where I started to where I am now on this. But yeah, if you've listened along through this whole thing, genuinely, I love you. And let me know that you did, because I'd be curious to know how many people actually got to this ending. But yeah, thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate the support. And I wouldn't have got to 20 episodes if I didn't have the true fans listening. I don't like the word fans, makes me cringe saying that. The genuine people that are supporting me and supporting this. So yeah, I love you. Thank you. And see you again on the next one.